Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. My name is Jillian Robinson. I am the Associate Artistic Producer here at Cup of Hemlock Theatre. And today I am joined by the phenomenal Ryan Borochovitz, one of our co-artistic producers. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Jill. How are you?
I'm doing all right as well. Thank you for asking. Today, Ryan and I have the honor of talking about the production SAMCA. This is a co-production put on by Spindle Collective and Riot King. It is written by Natalia Bushnik and Kathleen Welch, directed by Brendan Kinnon, happening right now until October 5th. So the total run September 25th to October 5th, 2024 at Black Creek Pioneer Village. So this is a site-specific show. But before we go too far into the woods on this one, why don't we do our usual icebreaker? Ryan, what are you sipping on today?
Yeah, so we just got back from the show. It's quite late in the wee hours, so no caffeine for me. I'm just having water to, sip on and scratch my bug bites while we get through this. How about you?
Yes, indeed. I have my mason jar of water, hydration station. Yeah, and we are coming fresh off of the site-specific journey. So we're in the warmth. It was chilly. It was
Yes.
chilly tonight. Like, I mean, not unbearably chilly, but I'm glad to be in the warm recording space.
Yeah, we both have thick sweaters on for those watching on YouTube who can see that. But yeah, if you do go to the show, bring a sweater, because even though it's still kind of tail end of the summer, early fall vibes, it does get quite chilly at this space.
Yes. I decided to wear one of my new autumnal sweaters that I've inherited from a friend of mine. So we've got some leaves and trees, which again was quite fitting as we saw this piece immersed at the Black Creek Pioneer Village.
You are on theme, yes.
Yes, indeed. So we will pop spoiler shield up down the line, but as per usual, Ryan, do you want to give us a little bit of a blueprint, a synopsis, if you will, of SAMCA?
Yeah, so SAMCA is a new play. It premiered, I think, last year or 2 years ago at the Hamilton Fringe Festival.
2022. Yes.
2022, nice. At the Hamilton Fringe Festival, I believe it received the new play or best new play award at that festival. So, and now it is back with us in Toronto. And so, like you said, it is an immersive site-specific piece that we are brought into a sort of wooded region. There are seats, certainly, for this first part of the show, but then there's movement in which you are brought to various other locations. So consider that with accessibility if you're deciding whether or not to see this show, if that's something that you feel like you would like to participate in. So it follows two sisters. Their names are Prava and Miha, and it is set in, I believe, 19th century Romania, and they have run away from their home, their very cold, stern, possibly dangerous father, and they have gone off into the woods and have planned to escape to a convent where they will be free of their family's strictures. Their mother passed away, giving birth to Miha, the younger of the two children. So Prava has been a maternal figure for Miha, and now they are in this cold and unfamiliar journey together with only each other for support and protection. And when one of the two sisters becomes, let's say, unexpectedly pregnant, this creates ripples in their relationship and all kinds of difficulties and challenges. And throughout the entire piece, to not get too far into spoilers, the title is SAMCA, which is not something I was familiar with prior to this piece. But this is a demonic figure from Romanian folklore who, kind of Krampus-like, is known for stealing children and perhaps bringing unfortunate perils to the lives of pregnant women and being a bit of a danger that lurks around the corner. I read a lot about this figure on the Wikipedia page for SAMCA while we were on the subway coming back to record this. And funny enough, this play is mentioned in the Wikipedia page. So good synergy there. That's a fun little tie-in. But yes, the SAMCA figure kind of feels at once framed as like a Gaia mother fertility goddess, but also this kind of dangerous, possibly malevolent figure who we don't know if summoning her or being in her graces is necessarily desirable. And I think to not get too far into spoilers, we can maybe cap that there for now. Do you have any thoughts? Anything you'd like to add?
No, I think the synopsis is there without getting too further into details. So as you, just to kind of add, so yes, it is the two sisters' journey that is sort of like the A plot of this, or what our focal point is. And then there is a chorus of women that sort of infuse the space with music and dialogue, poetry, taking on different sort of figures to the sisters' narratives as well. So yeah, so it's definitely, there's a choral entity that lifts or fills in the gaps of these two sisters'
I think I
stories too.
read somewhere in the press release that they're calling this kind of like a musical, and I feel like that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration. There certainly is musical or choral or melodic elements to it, and a lot of that I think was very well done and very impactful, but don't necessarily go to this expecting Sweeney Todd or Into the Woods for that matter. It is, yeah, it's, the music is there, but in like a kind of Greek chorus way more so than this being a song and dance.
Kind of created like the ambiance
Yeah.
that the sort of subtext that was kind of, the belly of the forest, if you will, that
Sure.
the sisters are gallivanting through or journeying through. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there, but post spoiler. Yeah, I guess just to kind of, before we get into spoiler too, like we've said multiple times, this is site specific. And so if you are going for majority of the piece, you will be sitting in chairs and in like a proscenium style venue or vibe. And then you are on your feet for the last, I would say, like 10 to 20 minutes. So just as like a heads up, there you travel sort of as a group, and it's beautifully, you're taken care of and guided to the next location. And then you walk on, you exit the village and go right back to the TTC, which is just up the road. So it is certainly accessible from the Highway 407 TTC stop. You just walk down Jane and go right there, and the company welcomes you, and you're on the journey. But yeah, so just kind of wanted to mention that before we get into spoilers. If folks do plan on attending, again, the production runs until October 5th. And so, if you do go out, definitely taking the TTC. It's super accessible, just like a 10-minute walk down the street. You are sitting for majority of the piece, but you will be on your feet the latter, like 10 to 20 minutes. And bring a sweater and a blanket even if you'd like to.
Yeah. I'll also add to what you're saying about the commute, so to speak. They did mention in an email we got that they would have a member of the team meet groups of people at that very TTC station 15 minutes before the show was set to begin. We got there with plenty of time, but it was still light out when we arrived in, so we didn't wait for that. But I assume that would be the case with not just this press performance that we attended, which I think was open to the public as it is. So that I assume would be the case every night, but make sure if you are planning on utilizing that service to just check in that is being offered.
Right, and get there no later than 7:15 is what guided from the TTC would be happening. Yeah. Just little
no, it's good logistics.
Specific
vibe.
Like
this site specific wise, it is still very much, it's more a creation of atmosphere than anything that I would say feels like inherent to the piece. This isn't Sleep No More. This isn't like a kind of choose your own adventure where you wander the grounds and see what's up. It's really just about creating the vibe. I have thoughts about that I might save for post spoiler, but before we do get into post spoiler, just general appraisals. What did you think of the show? What do you want to tell people about it who might be on the fence about seeing it?
General appraisal, go see this show. We are on the cusp of spooky season, being immersed in this environment. We even had some audience members around us donning like cloaks and sort of like getting right in on the sort of like spooky folklore action. Yeah, definitely see the show. It's something that's happening right now in the GTA that nothing else is like it. I think the cast, you can really, really tell there was a chemistry there, a heartbeat, that they've been working on this piece for several years. And I know several folks in the cast, Camila, Maddie, Brendan. These are folks that I've either done shows with or I've been in communication with them throughout the industry. And I know they've been working on this piece since its iteration at Hamilton Fringe too. And you can really, really feel that collective supportive energy I want to shout out the musicality of this piece. Again, we kind of talked about it earlier in the intro of how it really creates sort of like this underbelly ambiance. The whole cast, everyone was super musically talented as well. Like there's a lot of discorded vibes in this. I'm saying vibes a lot in this episode, but this show was a vibe of a vibe. So
it was a vibes piece for sure.
Yeah. And there's several extraordinary, I mean, all of them are extraordinary musicians, but there's the saws played in this. We've got like a recorder flute. We've got a shaker. There's a guitar. So there's many different instruments that sort of engulf our ears in a very eerie and like discorded way. Even like a lot of the cast voices would be in direct contrast musically with each other in a very sometimes a cappella setting, which that can be very difficult, especially when you are competing with possible airplanes flying overhead, because this location obviously is near Pearson Airport. But I thought the cast did a really good job of navigating any sort of outside sounds. It felt like we were to me, it felt like we were, because I know you mentioned Krampus earlier, Ryan, and like there is a bit of like, obviously that flavor to it, and like a bit of a Blair Witch Project vibe I got from this, obviously, because I think we're the setting, and it just kind of, I did feel like we were in like this globe of a world watching these sisters' wants and desires and struggles and journeys. So shout out to Brendan's direction too, because I think like I said, the chorus of women creating that ambiance, and then the way that the two-handers of the sisters, how those sort of transitions and groups were complementing each other was definitely mapped out through the direction. So shout out to Brendan's direction. Again, we just got off of the show, so I don't know if I'm making any sense right now, but shout out to Brendan's direction.
And we're both a little sleepy.
Yeah. So musicality, direction, ambiance. Brian?
No, you're covering the whole gamut. Like, I don't know how much there even is to add. You did mention how some people like donned cloaks in the audience and got really into the spooky vibes. When they showed up, those folks, I could have sworn like these must be audience plants, right? These are cast members. But no, like people are just excited to see something spooky at this time of year. And yeah, I think I would maybe wouldn't go as far as to say that this is like genuine horror in a way. It's like eerie Halloween kind of, maybe Over the Garden Wall is a helpful point of comparison.
Yes, I was thinking that as we were leaving.
Yeah, it's very autumnal. There's eeriness, but like it's not necessarily going to frighten you to your core. Parts of it you might find disturbing. There is a lot of content in this that things to do with pregnancies and perhaps miscarriages and infant mortality and sexual assault, of course. So content warnings about all of that. If any of those things disturb you, you might need to consider that or prime yourself if you do wish to see this. But yeah,
I will say with that too, they do, Brendan does say right off the hop of the experience that if there is any moment you do need to take a breath or a step away from the piece, you just stand up and an usher will do that. So they were very accommodating.
So they're aware of the kind of show they're doing, and they're giving themselves this venue where it's pretty easy to just be far away from the action because it's quite open and expansive. Yeah, so like there certainly are things that might be unnerving or disturbing, but I don't know if like I would call it like horror. But spooky season is like an aesthetic more so than like a genre, I guess, is a way that I would put that. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff here. I feel like I'm reluctant to maybe get into more of my kind of granular thoughts until we're post spoiler. But yeah, it's very neat. Check it out. Yeah, if anything we're describing sounds interesting to you, I think this is a show that's worth experiencing.
Definitely. So at this point, I think I would like to put a fallen bird on the screen.
Okay, wow. Yeah, we did not discuss what the spoiler image would be beforehand. Fallen bird. I would have said a saw with like a violin bow.
Yeah, but I'm going to do the bird.
Yeah, we'll go with the bird.
That, to me, is a prominent prop that this, again,
Yeah, so
put the bird, and now
just doing the bird.
There's the bird, and now we're in spoiler zone. Great. So we're in spoiler zone. You said you've had a couple things boiling for you. So yeah, go ahead.
Like, I'm trying to think if this is where I even want to start, but yeah, sure. Well, we've talked about the atmosphere. I don't know if this play needs to be outside, is kind of my takeaway of it. I get what it adds. I do understand the kind of atmosphere it creates, the spookiness. We are in the woods. But I don't know. With me, like, there's almost just too much reality interfering with our experience in this. That it is cold. There's bugs everywhere. You're getting bitten. They do provide bug spray at the little tent when you first enter, but I guess I did not put nearly enough on myself. There were like moths flying into my face at multiple times during this show. Yeah, the bugs love me, I guess. But yeah, it's and I when I'm seeing a show like this that is kind of like immersive or site specific in this way, I feel like maybe I'm a bit curmudgeonly with this, but I feel like it really needs to earn it. That I think that there needs to be something about this show that wouldn't work in a traditional black box or proscenium venue. And looking at, I don't know what they did at Hamilton Fringe necessarily. I maybe should have looked that up before we went into this or started recording. But if you had told me that they just did it at like one of the regular Fringe venues there, I feel like there's nothing about this show that wouldn't work there. And I often, I guess, am of the opinion that if there isn't a clear reason why it must be there, then it sort of, to me, feels a bit like a gimmick that, like, isn't it adding so much that we're in the space? But yeah, I don't know. I think if it's not adding that much to me, then I think we could limit some of those constraints that are just, become distractions from the experience and do take attention away from the story we're following. I don't know if we really needed to go on that kind of pilgrimage to be in a completely different space to watch the birth scene and then go into another space to get our big twist ending finale. Like all of those things to me could have taken place just on a stage or like in just like space. It could be like in the round or something if they want to get creative with, how the configuration is. But I don't know if you're nodding. Do you agree, disagree?
Yeah, I do agree too, and I think I also we've been talking about like SAMCA and like the folklore itself, but I want to get into the sort of symbolism that this piece, we kind of touched on it already, but there's a lot going on here, talking about the female body. It's talking about womanhood and what does that mean, and all of the different names that we have, like woman or mother, wife, and unpacking that and the longing, the sort of innate biological longing to be a mother, but then the antithesis of that, of how you're sickly repulsed by that, and how no woman is the same and no female experience is the same. And even hearing both sisters sort of have, unfortunately, a tragic past or relationship with their virginities, but both sort of exude that experience differently as well. So I just feel like there is a lot more content. I know I'm kind of going away from just this bare bones of should it be outside. I just think there is a lot more depth and content to this piece that I think you're right, Ryan. Like it could very easily just be inside of a standard theater peak, because that, to me, there are moments in this piece where I'm like, that is obviously like the most important takeaway from this. And as much as I did love that we were in Mother Nature, like we were surrounded by the trees and the ground and, sort of hugged by Mother Earth, I feel like it did. Yeah, we didn't necessarily have to be outside. But was it, again, the time of year that we're doing the show, like we said, spooky season, what did it add to sort of the raw viscerality that some of the piece evokes? Kind of, to me. But I will say too, hearing car sounds and hearing airplanes and even the generators of like the lights and stuff too did kind of take me out here.
I agree. It's interesting how because yes, there is a lot of depth in this text, and that's why if I get even a glimmer of a sense that this is being used as a gimmick, I get the sense that it's a play that's insecure about its own merits outside of the use of that gimmick, which is why I tend to be a little more critical of works that use immersion in ways that I don't necessarily see as fully justified, even if I completely understand where they come from. If I want to put on my dramaturgy hat and try to come up with post hoc justifications for things like the sounds of airplanes and ambulances and generators. I do feel like the final scene, in which, big spoiler alert, one of our main characters is SAMCA. But when that reveal happens and she delivers that monologue, and it slips in and out of the sort of old timey period vernacular and a lot more contemporary speech.
Yes.
Maybe the clashing of the contemporary machinery sounds being an underscore all along is like yes, these two time periods have been laminated this whole time. I don't know if I buy that. I think it's just a consequence of, but it affected. If I can justify it as part of the experience, then who am I to say that?
Well, and like the Industrial Revolution, it's the sound of colonization too, right? Like.
Sure, yeah.
But I don't know, like, right? Like, no, I do know, like, even at the start of the experience, right? As part of the land acknowledgement, Brendan kind of walked us through, we're standing in Black Creek Pioneer Village, which, we were encouraged to Brendan kind of left us with this sort of, I encourage you to observe things in contrast to each other, as, we're standing on this land that belongs to, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat peoples, etc. And yet we have these buildings that are just erected here over 100 years old, and sort of that eerie contrast.
Yeah, and literally preserved to celebrate the settlers, the pioneers, I think that contrast.
You justify the machines for sure.
Oh, sure. and I think beautiful land acknowledgement, Brendan. Like that was, I think, a great way of priming the experience. Whether or not that dramaturgically weaves its way into the experience, that's the way that I'm kind of just like having fun doing the mental exercise of assume everything is deliberate and find the meaning thereof, which is something I love doing. And I'm not going to say, even if it wasn't deliberate, that therefore it's wrong or an invalid interpretation, but it's an interpretation I only come to at the end as like now I can justify that, as opposed to something that like colors the experience throughout, I guess.
But that's fine, we unpack, that's what this show is for.
Yeah, no,
right? We're unpacking, we're refining, we're digesting, we're discovering. Yeah, we love that. I want to shout out the costumes, which I know in our program here, Kathleen Welch, playwright, music composer, and costume design.
She does it all.
Kathleen played Prava, aka SAMCA. We're in spoiler zone. I don't know why we're still trying to keep that a secret. But so, Kathleen, I thought the costume design was stunning. Very unifying, subtle, but packed a punch. Like having all of the choral women in sort of white gowns, it was giving the Crucible, it was giving Spring Awakening. It's just like this sort of period specific neutral gown, but all of them having sort of pinked or red splotches around the pelvic area. Again, it was like unifying to me. Obviously, it was symbolic of pubescent girls, but also assault, also pregnancy. Like, again, just it's interesting because, again, like, usually this is going to sound kind of obvious in a way, but like usually when I see blood like on a female's costume, and especially in that area, it's usually like very intense, right? It's like she is bleeding or there has been trauma. And the fact that it was just like pink smattering and this entire ensemble are, different women, like, again, it was so unifying, but subtle in a way that I think this whole piece kind of evokes that.
Yeah.
I don't
like
even know. Yeah.
If I'm understanding the ending of the show correctly, that I think even though all of these women have one of SAMCA's many names as listed in the program, and we hear about the 19 names so often, I get that they didn't have the budget to have a chorus of 19 members, although I think that would have hammered that point home a little better. But what can you do? 19 is in the folklore, according to Wikipedia, so that number, you're stuck with that number. But as I understand that kind of final image where the chorus shows up behind Prava / SAMCA in her nature throne, and they all kind of take their places around her. And then we have Miha joining them in a similar type of outfit, that these are her victims in a way, or they're the women whose lives she has taken, whose children she has taken. And so I think the blood imagery that you are detecting is what we saw happen to Miha happen to every single one of them in one way or another. And the fact that we have I forget, was the mother character named what the two sisters' as mother was?
I don't remember.
Yeah, so an apologies to the performer who I necessarily can't pick out of this list who played that role, but the fact that she was also one of the ones among the chorus, you think it's just like, oh, one of the actresses in the chorus is being singled out for a speaking part here. But I think this kind of ending reveals that, yes, she is just one of the many women who, as the story goes, as the story that the girls have been told their whole lives, that they've been telling themselves their whole lives, is she is one who was claimed by SAMCA in the process in which Miha came into this world.
Yeah. And that's Vestigia. That's the name of our performer. Andra Zlatescu.
Nice.
Andra, if I'm mispronouncing their name, but Vestigia.
Good job.
Yeah, again, I kind of touched on this prior to spoiler, but I also want to just, I guess, give praise and shout out to, I would imagine that even though Kathleen and Natalia are writers, that again, knowing that this show has kind of gone through iterations of workshops, that there has been sort of a bit of a devised flavor going into this piece, potentially, because from what we saw today in the direction and in the sort of individual pop outs that each ensemble member had, it did feel very organic and I can totally see why that person is acting as that character in this moment, or when one of them would step forward, it seemed very natural that it was their turn to speak. And we even had two of our members who did the bulk of the heavy movement or dance pieces, and that was a common sort of an iteration that was throughout the piece too. And then the same ensemble members who were playing the same instruments throughout. So I just felt again, as this piece was a collective heartbeat, you could tell there's individual agency that popped out through, and having done some devised work myself too, that obviously is helmed by the main writers and directors, but you could sense that the performers authenticity is woven into, which is lovely.
Because I imagine, I don't know what the audition process for a piece like this is, but I imagine they just ask for people who have some kind of music and or movement background, and just what do you have to contribute? We can work it into the show. You play the banjo, great. We'll have a banjo in it, and this stuff like that. Yeah. So and allowing it to develop organically, especially most of the choral elements, aside from the actual lines that they say, I don't imagine would be in a script. I don't think there's a stage direction written in the first draft of this that one of the chorus members takes out a banjo or a saw. Those are things that people bring their talents, and the team does yes, exactly.
I want to talk about the last couple moments of this piece, because we mentioned that Kathleen Welch, who plays Prava, the older sister, let's just also just kind of map out. So what happens, you find out that Prava is lusting to be a mother. It's her one true desire since birth. She wants to bear a child, and she has never been successful. We're sort of given the impression that she's barren, because throughout the piece, she does sneak away, and she does have sexual encounters with men, and it's never the outcome that she wants. Also, shout out to Kathleen coming back from those experiences and really showcasing the sort of trials and tribulations of women coming off of a sexual encounter, and how beautiful and lovely and exciting that can be, but also disheartening and uncomfortable and weird, detached. It is a cocktail, I will say. Speaking as a woman myself, there's a lot of, I feel like anyone who is sexually active can say this as well. There's always like a melange of things happening to you pre and post activity. But through this character, I just, props to Kathleen. I think the physical and emotional aftershock that she sort of gave Prava, very, very impactful and well done there. Sorry, there's a little tangent shot. But so Natalia, who plays Miha, she gets assaulted in the forest as her first sexual encounter, and becomes pregnant and wants nothing to do with being a mother to this child. So we're given these sisters' opinions on pregnancy and motherhood through their, like I said, their own journeys, which again, it's alluded to that Prava was probably assaulted by their father. And that's one of the main reasons why she's removing herself and Miha away from her father. So we're given, like I said, these two contrasting opinions of motherhood and longing to bear a child. But it's not until the very end that we sort of get in on, oh my goodness, Prava is going to usurp Miha's baby. And it's not until the very end that we were like, oh my goodness, Prava is SAMCA. Or SAMCA is using Prava's body as a vessel, etc. And I don't want to say problem, but like I kind of wanted these, again, opposing, if we're going back to Brendan wanting us to like percolate on opposing forces or opposing factors. These sisters who have been each other's ride or die, for lack of a phrase, throughout life. And quite literally, Prava has been like the mother to Miha. Like they've been connected. They're the only ones that Prava even says, like, I've trained Miha to love me. I kind of wanted a little bit more of like intensity of their opinions of motherhood from the beginning, so that when we do get to the end, as the audience watching, I'm already knowing Prava's game of wanting to steal the baby, or I'm already getting the flavor that Prava is SAMCA. It wasn't until like the last, I want to say like 15 minutes, that everything was kind of flicking. Like I do think there obviously was the envy, and again, Kathleen played it very well in like shuddering her body and the text of her wanting to like claw at Miha and being so jealous of the experience that she has to bear a child. Like there were punches of those moments, but I think I wanted that to boil a bit more, so that by the end, I'm now knowing what's going to happen, but I'm now curious as to how it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Like it seemed like everything happened really quickly at once, like that switch. I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of ideas here that I'm kind of just chewing on. I feel like we spoke a bit about this before we started recording, and you just kind of touched on it among all of that again, I feel kind of like a dick for even being hung up on this a little bit, but it's where my mind is kind of at. Is I struggle with the mechanics of Prava equals SAMCA a bit, in terms of, because there's, I guess, two possible interpretations, and unless I'm misremembering or I missed a critical line, I don't think it's explained exactly which one of these two possibilities it is. But it's either that Prava has been SAMCA this whole time, or an embodiment or avatar for SAMCA, or SAMCA has used Prava as a vessel or a host to do her bidding kind of at the very end. And I don't think we got an explanation for that specifically, unless I did miss something, or perhaps
no, I don't think we did either.
Yeah, and like it's fine to be ambiguous and open to interpretation there, but I think it really changes the temperature of this relationship if it's been a demon this whole time, pretending to be her sister and protector and most cherished loved one, just to pull a March of the Penguins at the end and steal her baby. Sorry, that's a scene from March of the Penguins that has always stuck with me, where if a baby dies, they steal. Yeah, I don't know if people know that. Is that common knowledge? That movie came out like 2005 or whatever. But, or is it just, I think to me, the story would be a lot more meaningful if it was just that Samka decides to overtake Prava at the end, maybe feed into the envy that she had as like a gateway. But then I might have liked to see a little more clarity in that being the case, because I don't really feel like we had, yes, there was envy and jealousy and the kind of contrasting views of motherhood between them, but I don't, to me, a lot of that feels very human in how it was portrayed earlier. So and again, I just don't know how we're supposed to interpret this twist as, sorry, you want to chime in?
What's really interesting is what you're saying here. Yeah, I think if of the two things we backed out, one, if it is Samka all along, like now that's kind of even eerie of like from the very beginning of when Miha was birthed and Samka was present to then, usurp the mother's life. Is Prava just Samka? And Samka disguised herself as her sister Prava, and I'm going to take you through this journey, but somehow knew all along that she was set up to be in the same peril that Mia's mother was in. That is that's eerie to me, because then at the end we're like, oh my goodness, you weren't her sister this whole time. You were just a demon pretending to be. Or if it's the latter and it is Prava, but you're right, if Samka usurped her as a vessel, where was that sort of like transition? When did that enter her? I guess would be my bringing to the sort of dramaturgical table there. Because I think you could go both ways, but just showcasing a little bit more of what take you want to go with.
Yeah, like on one hand, I kind of wish it's the latter, just because to me, I think it was Samka all along interpretation. I feel like that just undercuts all of Prava's interesting character depth and development. It's like when we hear, well, it doesn't have to. And I think the way that that interpretation could still be salvaged is if this is a play that is invested in the humanity of the mythic creature, that Samka is, yes, this demon, but she's not just this inhuman force, that she has wants and desires, and that's what motivates this. But I don't think you can get away with that if it's a rug pull at the end. That has to be something we find out like a third before it's over, so we can actually see that play out and reinterpret and understand. But when you give it as a rug pull, it kind of gives the sense, the vibe perhaps, of this being just like all of that character development and depth that you thought you were watching, none of it matters because I'm this other thing entirely.
Right.
And so I like a version of it's been Samka all along, but not if that is the answer for what we were watching in the version of it we were presented. Alternatively, I think the weakness of the Samka uses Prava as a host, that there needs to be another scene in there where we can visibly recognize it. It might have been something that was discussed in their rehearsal process of this is the moment in which Samka takes over, but I don't think it was legible to the audience, or maybe it would be on a second viewing, but it kind of, I feel like these aren't the kinds of questions that what we're asking that I think they want us to be leaving walking home. I think there are ways they could have been seeding these ideas to be profound questions as opposed to narrative mechanics questions. I said that's where as compelling as I think the ending was, I do feel a little shortchanged by it, and I think that there are wrinkles that could have been ironed out to prevent that. That's me.
I think so too. No, I agree with you. I think again it was a bit whiplashy for me at the end. I digested it and I was fully understanding what was happening.
Yeah.
But I would have loved another scene. I think also like halfway through, we really, really got the story through the lens of Miha, which makes sense because she's the one bearing the child. She's the one, that is the story that the journey we are supposed to follow. Like, she is our protagonist in a way.
Mm.
But I would have loved a bit more alongside that. Like, you know, when Miha was making the potion and there's that whole scene and where she almost stabs her belly. Like, Prava was off stage at that moment. I wanted to know what she was doing. So, like, if this became a bigger production and did become maybe a bit even more immersive or site specific, where you can follow the sisters' journeys, because when there's a lot of instances when they're together, there's also a lot of instances when they're apart, when they individually go into the village, when they individually have their sexual encounters, when they individually, you know, one is left behind, or when one of them is on this side sleeping, what's the other? Like, that would be neat.
Yeah, and that would justify the immersion more. Like I was saying, I didn't feel like it did enough to justify the immersion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you'd have 2 tracks and you would literally be following 2 different opinions and opinions and environments when it comes to motherhood, when it comes to womanhood, when it comes to
I like that.
What I said. Yeah, that makes
sense. I like that a lot. What is interesting about that is if you are the pocket of the audience that's following Miha, you experience the play kind of tantamount to how we experienced it, with just like the kind of stable viewing position of, this is a twist. You thought the story was one thing, but really is this other thing. When we get that sort of revelation about who Prava is, and there would maybe even be more disconcerting whiplash about that because we wouldn't have seen anything from Prava's perspective. The pocket of the audience that's following Prava, I think the benefit of separating the audience this way is they can find out almost like right away or very early on that this is SAMCA, or at least if we're going with the possession interpretation, we see a full out scene of that happening. And then the tension would ratchet up, not in like, oh, I didn't see that coming kind of way, but in like, oh no, Miha, get out of there. Like, because we know what's coming. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I was like, what's really interesting if you were to do this as a double bill is like, if you saw the Miha story unfold like we predominantly saw like tonight, you might have in the back of your brain like, oh my goodness, like this SAMCA human sounds like a beast, or this, like we are feeling for Miha, like going through this pain and these images and visuals and the fear. I can only imagine how. And then you see the second show and it's this visceral beat, and you get to meet SAMCA in the flesh, and you're like, oh my goodness. And then vice versa. If you decide to go see the SAMCA version first, you're like, wow, this beast, blah, 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 blah. And then you're exposed to, wow, this innocent child is going to be taken hostage by this beast.
So in this hypothetical, every audience gets to see both versions, but the variable is which one you see first.
Yeah, and I think you would have a whoa moment with either one you see first.
Yeah, I like that. Neat.
Different ways.
And that way, if you did see the Miha version first, because it would presumably still have the same ending to the story, you would then watch the entire Prava version. It kind of then doesn't even matter where they put the possession moment or the reveal moment, because you will have already seen it. And like, I think that's interesting because sorry, I don't know where I'm going with this thought. I'm so sleepy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We're unpacking and
we're spitballing. Like, after a certain point, I think we stopped reviewing the show we saw. And we're kind of just like brainstorming an alternative version of it. But hey,
this is how we're thinking. Like,
if anyone at Spindle or Riot King is liking these ideas and wants to do a truly immersive branching path narrative version of this, is a free idea. You can have it. Maybe thank us in the program, I guess. I don't know.
But yes, so closing out the episode, I think we've shared our opinions. We've given our appraisals. Go see this show. Again, there's nothing like it right now in the GTA. Riot King and Spindle Collective, you've done a phenomenal job of creating this entire atmosphere and bringing this, super important content, especially in the world we live in. and women's rights are still not respected in many, many pockets of the world. And so many forms of theater where we are showcasing uteruses and wombs and motherhood and womanhood and what that can mean to folks definitely should be on our stages or in our spaces. So thank you so much for continually doing that. Great. So like I said, this is happening now until October 5th, 2024 at Black Creek Pioneer Village. It is a co-production, Spindle Collective, Riot King, SAMCA, written by Natalia Bushnik, Kathleen Welch, directed by Brendan Kinnon. We will pop information on where you can grab your tickets down below this episode. And on that note, Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Cup of Hemlock Theatre, where folks are
Sure.
watching or listening to this episode?
Yeah, because there's no point in following me personally, but if you like what we do here at Cup of Hemlock, you can follow us at COH Theater on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Not calling Twitter the other thing, that's dumb. But yes, it is Cup of Hemlock Theater on YouTube where you might be watching this, Cup of Hemlock Theater podcast and all the podcast places where you might be listening to this with your ears. You may have noticed that we're getting dangerously close to episode 200 of this show. So that'll be happening very soon. I think next week, actually, because we have 2 episodes coming out this week. Ooh, big week. This is, I think this is 198. Next episode this week is 199 and then 200. If you want to know what episode 200 is, watch episode 100 because that's where we decided it in the middle of recording that. And we have committed to that plan that we made about 2 years ago, and that'll be coming out pretty soon for episode 200. So celebrate with us by partaking in that particular piece. Yeah, how about you, Jill? Where can people find and follow you?
Yes, people can find and follow me at my artist Instagram account, which is jillian.robinson96. I post covers of songs, upcoming info on any shows I've got down the line. There's a lot of photo shoot photos recently. I'm trying to potentially get into some modeling opportunities. Always looking to bolster out the different avenues of the industry. So there's some content on there for that. I will be doing a original soundtrack for Tommy Rhodes, the musical that we did in the spring. That's happening in October. So keep your eyes and ears open for that on my page. But on that note, we are going to close our eyes and ears for the night. Again, we are a sleepy team over here, but what a phenomenal way to end out the night witnessing SAMCA. So we'll take our goblets, our water, not our witch's potions. This is just water. We'll do a final cheers and catch you all